thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We are really excited about this panel and to share the work that we have been doing in community, actually, with many of you. And so tonight is really a celebration of all of the work that we have been doing together. I'm Amy Lerman. I'm a professor at the Goldman School of Public Policy. Shout out to our dean, who is here. And I am also the executive director of the Possibility Lab, which is a research and practice lab at the University of California. And the work that we're going to talk about tonight is really a partnership with these folks and the communities. So, hopefully you got a chance to talk to some of the community partners who are sitting at the tables. If you didn't get a chance yet, please do talk to them about the extraordinary work that they are doing. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panel, and then I will get out of their way and turn it over to these fantastic folks to talk about the work they've been doing together. From the left, this is Naomi Levy, an associate professor at Santa Clara and our director of community engaged research at the Possibility Lab. Daniela Medina from the Department of Violence Prevention. Who we know and love from her time at the university and who now has left us to join the city of Oakland and the incredible work that they're doing. This is JJ Polar, ambassador and outreach specialist at Tribe, one of our community partners. George Galvis, the executive director at Courage, again, one of our fantastic partners. And Andrew Park, the executive director at Tribe. So I will turn it over to Naomi. Thank you again for joining us.
I think I'm mic'd, so you can hold on to that. Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to have a chance to talk to you all about the way that we are bringing people power to policymaking, especially around the issue of public safety in the city of Oakland. Before I get too far into my little spiel I'm going to be giving, I want to point out that you all have cards with and pencils on your seats, so if you have questions, you can write those. And I think we've got staff around who you can hand them to. Who should folks be handing their cards to? Right over there in the back corner. You can hand Kate your cards. And I also just want to say how excited I am to be here in the company of this amazing panel of community partners that we've been working with. We can go to the next slide. What I'm going to be talking about is this research program that is called the First-Hand Framework for Policy Innovation. And I want to just begin by pointing out that the entire goal of this research program, this initiative at the Possibility Lab, is policy innovation. What we are trying to do is figure out ways to do things in a new way, in a different way, in a better way, hopefully. But the way that we do that is in this first-hand framework. And what first-hand framework refers to is the way that what this research program is trying to do is tap into a certain kind of expertise. It's the kind of expertise that comes from having lived through something, right? That's what we mean by first-hand expertise, right? This is the kinds of knowledge, the kinds of wisdom that all sorts of folks have. Okay, next slide. And the reason why we are engaged in this first-hand framework for policy innovation initiative is because we believe that the people who are closest to social problems are uniquely situated to be able to inform their solutions. And I want to point out that there's something really deeply broken, even though we always try to inject some community voice at town halls and so forth, but there's really a disconnect a lot of times between policymakers and community. And this research initiative is trying to be a corrective to that. So the problem is that the people who have this amazing wisdom and this amazing expertise are often the very people who are left out of the conversations when policy decisions are being made. So we are turning to the first-hand framework as a solution here. And I want to sort of set the stage for why this matters and what we're doing here. And that has to do with this idea of the power of measurement. The things that we pay attention to are the things that we usually try to affect change in, right? So just think about the way that Teachers often will teach to the test, right? The things that are being measured are the things that we often put our energies into changing. And so in the area of public safety, what we tend to measure public safety with is crime statistics. And therefore, the kinds of policies that we enact are just trying to move the needle on crime statistics. We can click one more time. The problem with this is that if we are only measuring safety through crime statistics, then all of our solutions are going to be focused on crime. But we would like to expand the vision. And so the way we do this is by coming up with a different way of measuring. First-hand indicators are the way we do this. First-hand indicators are basically just the signs and signals that people are already using in their daily lives to figure out how things are going, right? So this is how communities, this is how we tap into that special expertise I was talking about. If we just ask people how they know what they know, then we can source amazing solutions. So by starting with first-hand indicators, we're able to prioritize the people who have this amazing knowledge, the people who are most impacted by the problems we're trying to solve. We're able to tap into the expertise that I was mentioning. And when we do that, we start to change the conversation a little bit, right? We start to pay attention to dimensions of the problem that the so-called experts might not know to pay attention to. And so that allows us then to devise solutions that are necessarily going to be relevant to the lives of the people who are most impacted by those problems. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to devise new solutions. So I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that we should replace crime statistics or replace policy that is trying to change the story about crime. I'm saying that we need to add to it. We need to expand how we're defining public safety. We need to tap into these first-hand indicators and develop policies to complement the work that's already happening trying to reduce crime. And that's what this first-hand framework allows us to do. So let me talk you through how we do this. We begin with partnership. And that's where these fine folks come in, and we're going to hear from them for in a minute, but I'm first going to tell you about our process. So to do this work in Oakland, we started spending the better part of a year just building trust with organizations. There's a absolute wealth of community organizations in this amazing city. And we reached out to 42. That's a very small number of the large number of organizations out there, but we reached out to 42 different organizations to see if what we wanted to do was going to fit with what they wanted, what they needed to do. Of those 42 organizations we reached out to, about 3/4 of them said, yeah, let's have a conversation. And out of those conversations, we established 6 amazing partnerships. And as we worked with our partners, we did a lot of work to get to know each other, to teach each other a lot. We conducted trainings that were not just us telling them how we're going to do the research. They were co-trainings. Our partners were also teaching us about what it's like to work in their communities. And one of the things that we really asked them for is help in defining the communities that we would be reaching through our work with them. And as we chose our partners and as we worked with them to define the communities, it was vital to us that the communities that we would reach through this work are those that were most impacted by issues of crime and violence in the city of Oakland. So through our partners, can we stay on that slide? Sorry. Through our partners, we reach different kinds of community. Community here is defined as a group of people who have some kind of a shared everyday experience. So some of our partnerships, the communities were defined by identity groups. Some of them were defined by geography. Some of them were defined by a shared experience. And so, for example, with the Unity Council, we reached Spanish-speaking and Mom-speaking populations. With Tribe, this was a geographic community, we reached folks who lived all around San Antonio Park. With BOSS, we reached a combination of identity and geography. We worked with African-American residents of East Oakland and of 2 different neighborhoods in West Oakland, both Hoover Foster and Acorn. And then in terms of the shared lived experience groups, SARI, we reached Southeast Asian refugees, primarily Cambodian and Burmese refugees and their families. With MISSY, we reached young women and girls who either were victims of or at risk of sex trafficking. And with Courage, we reached youth who are systems impacted. What this means is youth who have either been incarcerated themselves or who have had family members who were incarcerated or who were in the foster system at some point during their lives. With these community partners, we held 24 focus groups, we held 9 town halls, talked to hundreds of residents all around the city of Oakland. And all told, if you think about all of this work that went into it, all the people who showed up to those groups, all the staff members of the community organizations and the researchers' time, there was more than 2,000 hours of community engagement, all of which was compensated. So it was really important to us that when we asked people to come and talk to us, that we were compensating them for their time. All right, next slide. Through these community engagement sessions, these focus groups and town halls, we co-created what we refer to as first-hand indicators. And really those indicators all came out of a conversation that started with the question, what signs show you if your community is safe or unsafe? And from those conversations, we co-created nearly 600 different indicators of safety. And in our analyses, and I have to give a shout out to my amazing group of research assistants at Santa Clara University who helped do all of this coding. We placed those indicators into 7 different conceptual categories. And I'm going to talk about each of those in turn. So first, let's talk about violence and stressors. If you go to the next slide. This is an example of a violence and stressors indicator. The idea of getting so used to hearing gunshots that you just start to tune them out, right? This is the kind of thing that lands in the violence and stressors category, and you'll see this is the biggest category. And these are also often the kinds of things that we pay attention to when looking at crime statistics or things like that. But in addition to violence and stressors, we heard about state control. These are efforts that the state is making to try to control crime and violence. And sometimes the indicators we heard here are about the negative effects of those efforts, right? Like being able to name people who have been killed by the police. A really large category came in what we call social capital. This is all of the indicators that have to do with community and the way that we're interacting with each other. People feel safer when their neighbors are friendly, when they greet each other, when they wave and say hi, when they exchange phone numbers, right? The next largest category was young people. So many indicators had to do with what young people are doing, right? If kids are out playing, people feel safe, right? The next category I'll talk about is economic security. And here I really want to emphasize this indicator came out of a conversation where we asked people, how do you know if you're safe? So if people can afford organized sports activities, they feel like their community is safer, right? These are indicators that came directly out of those conversations. The last 2 categories are physical environment. This is everything from green spaces and parks to infrastructure, and also seeing things like drug paraphernalia on the streets. And then finally, health. We heard of a lot of indicators that had to do with either physical health or mental health. Okay. From there, after coding all the indicators, what we then did as researchers is look at the dynamic processes that are in play here. One of the things that the indicators can do is show us the way that one thing leads to another that leads to another. And so, for example, you might end up with a negative feedback loop. If you click one more time, some indicators will populate here. This is an example of how we can map a set of 4 indicators to a causal process. So here, we have something like a direct measure. Something that we heard a lot was the sense that kids feel like they have no other options, and so they join gangs, right? We can go backwards in time in the causal process to look and see what causes that, right? If teenagers feel like they have to rely on each other because adults are absent, that might lead to feeling like a gang is your best option. And then we can also trace that forward in time to the consequence of kids causing harm without realizing it, without understanding just how big of an effect it was going to have on their communities. And all of this leads to and is also rooted in what we refer to as a root condition of parents being afraid to really parent their kids. But I want to be really clear here that we didn't only see negative feedback loops. We also saw really amazing positive feedback loops. And in the same dimension of young people, you can see here something like a direct measure of kids feeling like they have those basic life skills like how to manage money. We can go backwards in time to where that comes from, of having the mentors that they need to teach them those skills. We can go forwards in time to the feeling that they have alternatives to criminal activity. And then that all feeds into this root condition of people in the neighborhood really succeeding and then coming back to the neighborhood to invest in the neighborhood and to serve as role models. So we can really see that there's also positive feedback loops that are going on in the city that lead to a sense of a presence of safety. And then if we zoom out and sort of put all of this together into this very dorky map, you can start to see the way that simultaneously we have negative feedback loops, these downward spirals that lead to more violence, and also these virtuous loops, right, that bring us into a situation of increased safety. What the payoff here is, can we stay on that slide for 1 second? What the payoff here is that when we map this out, we can start to envision a whole host of solutions that can really start to move the needle on issues of safety. And it's not just, let's intervene in this one spot. One intervention might have a small effect, right? Or maybe a big effect, depending on how good that intervention is. But if we couple it with a whole host of other interventions that are really trying to affect change throughout this mapped system, and also on multiple dimensions, we can really, really start to move the needle. And so this really points to the need for a holistic approach to solutions to this question. But that's where our work as researchers needs to take a back seat, right? Because the next step in the process is community-sourced solutions. And this is really, actually, before I talk about DVP, I want to talk a little bit about the community-sourced solutions, and I've got nothing up there on that slide. This is where the website comes in that we're releasing. On the back of those coasters that you see around, there's a QR code. It takes you to an amazing website that our partners at Possibility Lab put together. An amazing shout out here to Kochi Hernandez, who was the absolute genius behind this website. The point of the website is to give these indicators back to community. We don't own these data. These data are owned by the whole community. And we're really hoping people will explore the data, look through the indicators, and try to come up with solutions through that. We also really hope that our community partners will continue to use the indicators we sourced together and that we co-created to help inform their programming. And then finally, with DVP, we are working in partnership with their community engagement team to develop community-sourced solution. These the community engagement teams are going to be working with Possibility Lab researchers to co-create a community consultation process. And from those, they're going to craft recommendations to the city. We're going to work with them so that they can really present those solutions well to the city administrator and to the mayor. And then in addition to those city-led interventions, they're also going to be proposing smaller scale community initiatives that we're hoping to be able to fund through the Possibility Lab. And then in the final step, as those community-led interventions and those city-led initiatives take root and are being piloted, we will come back and help evaluate those using the first-hand indicators as the metrics of evaluation, right? And here I want to point out that these first-hand indicators can be turned into quantitative metrics using administrative data, observational data, survey data to really track how things are going over time in the city. Okay, I've talked enough. I want to hear from our panelists, and I'm sure you all do too. So I'm going to now turn to our panelists and ask them some very leading questions. So first, I'm going to turn to you, Andrew, and I'm going to ask you if you could talk a bit. Actually, this is a question for all panelists, so we're going to go one at a time in turn. I want to hear about one of the indicators that really speaks to you, and maybe tell us a little bit about why it speaks to you.
So to answer the question straight up, one of the indicators that spoke to us, because we hear it all the time, is, there's these encampments, and our families don't feel safe because there's other behavior that's often associated with these encampments: alcohol, drug abuse, arson, violence, mental illness, and just incidentally, just saying that, I just want to say that I think that we have urban metro type of challenges in our big cities that we just didn't have decades ago. So oftentimes when people are saying, let's return it back to what it was, when I don't know what they're talking about, because back to what it was wasn't what it was, wasn't that great, wasn't that safe, at least in the parts that I grew up. But people say that, a lot of those social fabrics, social contracts, they've kind of dissipated away. And so we need new solutions. And oftentimes in the community, we feel like we're going insane because it's the same binary conversations around public safety. We weren't dealing with these encampments. So how can so when you introduce something like harm reduction, I know some of the individuals in this room that were saying, let's bring porta potties and sinks and showers to these encampments. People are like, no, you can't do that. That's going to encourage that. But now with Tribe, a way that we've been able to hit that indicator is through community ambassadors. So there's new level urban problems, right, that simply police cannot and will not handle. There's simply not enough resources. They're not built that way. Whereas when you have community ambassadors, violence interrupters, outreach specialists, not case, but care managers, life coaches, who are out there on the streets engaging every day, being a presence. So just to give you an example, we're all about action, all about sort of brass tacks type of stuff. There was one person just starting fires in Clinton Park, Little Saigon, which some of you guys have heard. People say, oh, there's so much crime in Chinatown. Chinatown had this much compared to Little Saigon. It was like this much. But the politics were not set up in Little Saigon to really say, we need help. The city understood that, so I definitely want to give credit to the city. The city was saying, we see the data in 19X in your beat. How can we help out? And this arsonist one person can cause damage to 500 people, but it takes 500 people, 500 hours to restore that damage that was done. Some of you guys know what I'm saying. I'm just talking about an active shooter, but it could be somebody who just came and just every day is just doing something that's breaking the social contract, right? And so, again, police, different people city resources cannot necessarily handle this, but when you have a community partner that comes and play with the community solution every day out of respect and honor, even though you're not all there, I'm going to respect and honor you. He eventually one day had everything to say, I want to go, I'm ready. We got him assessed, went to John George, may or may not be the best place. He came back like 3 days later, completely a new person, And so now we don't have to tell him, stop setting these fires. It's like, hey, brother, what do you need today? A meal, a shower, some money in your pocket? And it's kind of now all these resources aren't going to that particular issue. We can move on, to other solutions. So.
Thank you. George, what about you? What indicator speaks to you and why?
Yeah, so I guess in typical fashion, maybe I'm just inherently anti-authoritarian, but I can't just pick one.
Okay.
So I'm going to pick three. So one is just kind of referencing back to that positive loop that you discussed a little earlier in this slide deck. People feel safer when they see folks who they know have been there, done that. People who they know maybe used to be hitters on the block, previously incarcerated, coming back and serving their community in positive ways. That makes them feel safe. And it really sends strong messages. I mean, it's really simplistic, but it sends such a powerful it creates such a powerful ripple effect for so many other folks who are like, damn, I remember when that fool was hella loped out, man. If he could change, then I could change, So that's one. Two, I have to just kind of select, because these are things that are kind of my mantra that really just kind of reinforce, punctuated what I've consistently said. People, there's kind of like a tale of two cities in Oakland. Let's be real about it, you know what I mean? And we're very much kind of at this political splinter in this moment right now, almost the way we are as a nation right now. And I think that, there's folks who are very well intentioned, but some folks feel safer with police. I can tell you that black and brown communities in the flats do not feel safer with police. I mean, it's been over 50 years since the Black Panther Party was founded here in Oakland, and the Black Panthers famously said, we don't need police protection. We need protection from the police, and nothing's changed. And so our folks do not feel safer when they see increased police presence. They feel less safe. So that's the second indicator. And then the third one, which is, I'm a proud co-founder of a little something called All of Us or None. Anybody heard of All of Us or None? Yeah. Let's see. All of us? All right, there's some folks who heard of us. Cool. So All of Us or None, we founded over 20 years ago. We had the audacity as formerly incarcerated people to want to speak on our own voice. And one of the very first things we really kind of pursued was a little something called Ban the Box. We took Ban the Box all the way to executive order under President Obama. But despite the success of Ban the Box, barriers for reentry are still almost as prevalent as they were 20 years ago. There's some slight improvements, but a lot of those same barriers still exist. And a lot of our folks still speak to the struggle, and they don't feel safe. You know what I mean? And what happens if you have people who are previously incarcerated and then that stigma prevents them from being able to get housing. It prevents them from being able to get a job. It prevents them from being able to volunteer at their children's school. Well, what you're doing is you're forcing them into a corner. Like, everybody has to eat. Everybody wants to feed their family. And if you can't meet basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter, then it forces people into the underground economy. So that's another indicator that I think really needs to kind of be punctuated.
Thank you. JJ, what about you?
And I left y'all some time.
Yeah, you did great. Thank you. JJ?
I feel like with me, what resonates, the indicator that resonate with me personally is cleaning up the parks, Oakland parks. I work with Tribe, I'm with the R&O team, resources and operations, and I'm also ambassador. I start my day at 9 o'clock. Every day I come in, pick up sticks, vest on. We finna go clean up the park for an hour, every day. I got 5 people on my R&O team. Sometimes they start at 11. When they come in, they pick up sticks from 11 to 12. They picking up garbage all around the park. I feel like that's a great indicator because who don't want to come to a clean park? Once you get people that come to a clean park, you could talk to them. You could say, hey, how you doing? Just that, just talking to somebody, seeing people coming, hey, how you doing? That introduced them to Tribe. We give out free food at Tribe. We give out diapers at Tribe. We give out this at Tribe. They see that, I want to come back. Park clean, we giving out food, we really outside. We firsthand giving out people whatever they need. If they need something, if we can't give it to them, we're going to get them the resources. We're going to try to connect them with other agencies, try to get them the resources. So I feel like doing that, and also once I clean up these parks, not just cleaning up the park, but also we give out flyers because we do big events. We do food distributions. We got a food distribution this Thursday. We just did distribution at 5 parks yesterday in Oakland to put flyers, go door to door, hand out flyers. Come to this free event, sign up. We take appointments, whatever you need. I feel like this helped the community because once I give food to people that really need it, I didn't have people firsthand, with tears in their eyes. There was a lady last week, it gave her some diapers. She said she didn't have diapers for everybody for about a month. She was crying, I had to give her diapers. That really, I'm less fortunate, but it's people, when I see that, I'll be like, wow, I'm fortunate, And doing that really struck me, that really touched my heart, just doing that. And that's why I really work with Tribe and just really cleaning up the park, I feel like is a firsthand. There it go right there. They see a clean park, they can bring their kids out. There it is right there, they got kids. You need some diapers, you need some food, you need some milk, we got you. So just cleaning up the park, make sure people come out. People want their park back. I remember we was at San Antonio Park. San Antonio Park used to be dangerous. Nobody wanted to go there. And now we occupying the tennis courts, got storage containers, doing food distributions out there. People want to come see that. So, yeah.
Thank you. And then the same question to you, Daniela.
Yeah, I think two indicators stood out for me just in terms of just the folks that we work with, just the population that we serve. One of them is I have to have a weapon to feel safe, and the other one was violence is normal. That for me really stood out just because, you know, the people that we work with on a daily basis, I think most times you hear things on the news or you hear about, you know, what's driving the violence, but you really don't, a lot of folks don't have an understanding just of like what folks have actually been through and what they've gone through and just like witnessed growing up, right? We're talking about in the parks, in our communities. I mean, even myself, I think the first time, you know, in Oakland, I was in your hood, in the Dubs. Definitely, like the first time I saw like just an interaction and an argument, it led to like guns being drawn. So that was like in the second grade for me. So just seeing like how that has impacted people and really just trying to serve the population that we serve, there's a sense of not just, you know, empathy, but just a real understanding of what they are going through and why they feel unsafe. So for me, those are like the two things that really stood out, just like the understanding, and I can see that those were some indicators that people would have brought up in the community.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to come back to you, Andrew, and I'm going to ask you this question. When we first approached you to discuss this project, and when we described to you what we wanted to do, can you talk a little bit about why you thought it was a good fit for Tribe? Because you were like gung-ho from the very beginning, and I'd love to hear about what it was about this work that seemed like it would be beneficial to Tribe and your community.
Yeah, we were able to jump on right away. I mean, what's that series on, you know, non-network TV where they were saying, it is known, you know, it's just known. You got to listen to the community. You know, there's different ways. I mean, George started a group, you know, all of us or none of us, but another way to say that is nothing about us without us. And this is just known. But I think limited resources and people fighting for the small piece of the pie just kind of, you know, make us go to these short-term solutions, and then it creates these vicious negative cycles, these negative loops, where the community is a lot worse. But then the politicians are gone at that point. They don't have to deal with that. And then there's new politicians in place trying to deal with new issues, not new issues, but a bigger issue. And we say, oh, and we try to apply the old problem again. So I think that we were just excited. We were excited about the quote-unquote ivory tower, not just coming to study the community, but really respect, honor, listen to the community, and have some weight. We need studies like this. We need websites like this. We need white papers. We need you know, forums like this where it's just constantly our people hear it, because the politics are going to be played till the end of time. But can we infuse into the politics some change that's going to actually make a difference in the community without just money changing hands and new policies and then people getting credit for these policies, and then, you know, correlations, not causation, but we're not paying attention to that level to say that a certain policy did it. But we in the community know what's really making a difference. So that was really the hope, you know, that I had, and the excitement is just that, wow, you guys are bringing your research skills, your analytical skills, just all the look at the resource tonight of the ivory tower, and God bless you guys, right? You know, but we need more of this to infiltrate into policymakers so they can have the courage to really be able to maybe you're only going to be one term, but that one term you did more than somebody who did 10 terms, you know, and still he's still there, man. And we don't want to stand against you because you're gonna tax us in some way, you know. It's like, have the courage to really get in there, and then that courage seeps into all the different staff members who work for the city. It's like, no, I work for the city. I work for the community. You know, I don't work to save my job, or, you know, some new regime is in town. And when the city and the community is working together, when policymakers and city, you know, staff and administrators working together with community, and the community is really holding the line and the gravitas of like, you got to work with us. You got to have us be there. You got to listen. You know, like on East 15th, some of you guys know there was a big issue with human trafficking, sex trafficking, because the AC Transit BRT moved the commercial activity up to a residential block that the neighbors didn't know what to do with. The solution there wasn't more police, because we tried that. But as soon as the police leave, it just comes right back. We did a septet solution. Somebody help me out. Joe, help me out. What does that mean? It's like, All right, he got them. So we put up barriers. It didn't work on, sorry, George, on Cap Street in the Mission in San Francisco, but it worked here because we had community support and we let everybody know, hey, we doing this. It's not the city. It wasn't just Tribe. It was Ibesi. It was St. Anthony's. We had a whole coalition. And so that's one application that like we were doing in real time, applying firsthand framework, that it's not just a binary thing. Let's apply CEPTED to this, and now almost overnight, the activity disappeared. Yes, we moved it on to international, but because the community is leading, now we're having research visits on how can we eradicate the sex trafficking, this underground economy, by providing other solutions. We have a 3-point plan. You know, we're going to be presenting with the city, to, you know, in this whole area, and not just East 15th. So.
Thank you. So as we started out the research and as we were trying to find the right partners to work with, one of the things that we quickly realized is there's no way that we could include all communities in Oakland. Oakland is so diverse, right, and has so many different communities. But when we learned about Courage's work and when we turned to have conversations with George, it was clear to us that Courage, the folks that Courage works with, had to be part of this conversation. And so, George, I'd love to give you a chance to talk a little bit about what would we have missed if we didn't include systems-impacted youth that work with Courage in this research?
Sure, and I may actually preface my response with a little bit of background about myself and Courage as well. I never graduated from high school. I got a GED when I was incarcerated, and I crept into UC Berkeley through the back door as a community college transfer student, and I graduated with honors. And then I went back and I did my graduate studies there. I was a PPIA fellow. I was a McNair scholar. I, conducted primary research and I published, scholarly journal articles. I am very critical of research, academia. I'm all about decolonizing research, and I'm all about social action research, participatory action research, youth-led, community-led. And so when we were first approached, I wasn't enthusiastic like my brother Andrew. I kind of went on a whole tirade about research is the way of recolonizing communities of color. And black and brown communities have been researched to death. And I went on a whole tirade. I think I may have gone on 10, 15 minutes, for real, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And white fragility is real. And despite all of that, Naomi was not fazed at all, to her credit. She wasn't fazed at all. If anything, I think she might have been more eager to partner with us. You know what I'm saying? As a result of that, so I was like, okay, cool. In terms of what would have been missed, well, we brought in formerly incarcerated voices. I mentioned I'm formerly incarcerated. About 70% of my staff are formerly incarcerated. Those who are not directly formerly incarcerated are family members and folks who have been systems impacted in many other ways. What we also did, and what I should share, is that, I'm been a juvenile justice commissioner in Alameda County for many, many years. I need to shout out one of our amazing young leaders who was the first formerly incarcerated youth juvenile justice commissioner in Alameda County, Xochitl Larios. And I'll shout out our managing director, Vamsi, who also chairs, is formerly incarcerated, is also an attorney, and serves as the chair of the Alameda County Juvenile Justice Commission. Because of our relationships and networks, we were able to do something that is, I think in some ways maybe unprecedented, but really phenomenal. We were able to actually get the young people who are currently incarcerated. So we had a whole bunch of focus groups with young people who are formerly incarcerated, currently on probation, other folks who have been home for a few years and, different sort of trajectories, but people have been directly impacted. But we got to talk with the young people who are currently incarcerated, and, our philosophy is that those who are close to the pain are close to the solution. We are the experts of our own lives. And part of the reason why we've been critical of academic research is it's oftentimes been this extractive sort of relationship, right? In which people study us, we become subjects, and then they become experts of us and supposedly know us better than we know ourselves, right? And so, we demanded co-authorship and a whole bunch of other things, and those were all demands that were met as a part of this process. Once again, they didn't get scared off, you know what I mean? And in terms of just kind of equitable sort of resource sharing, like there was already sort of a budget and all these kinds of things that were already kind of set, but they really went, I think, above and beyond to just try to make sure when additional resources became available, that they really acknowledged the additional work we were willing to kind of take on in this process and compensate our folks for that, you know what I mean? So I think a lot would have been missed because I think that the young people who are currently in the Juvenile Justice Center in camp, I think the formerly incarcerated voices, I think, would not have been as represented. I think every organization here, if you work in Oakland and you're working with working class communities, touches our population. But I think in a very specialized way, particularly because we're also doing active political education and leadership development. Like for us, the direct service, like we're not a direct service agency, we're a movement building organization. The direct service that we provide is for us the first point of engagement. And if we're doing our job effectively, then we're engaging them to build in community with us, to support and serve their community, to start getting involved in political education and leadership development. And for us, the highest, most elevated form of engagement is to elevate their voice and power as community organizers, right? And so our young people aren't necessarily just having lived experience, they actually have a very critical political analysis and got a PhD from the School of Hard Knocks, so.
Thank you. So JJ, you were involved in different parts of the research and most recently helped contribute to the website. And I would love to just hear a little bit from you about what it was like to be part of the research.
When I first when Drew told me about it, I wanted to do it because, I'm a black man from East Oakland. We don't usually get to share our experiences on what go down. We hear gunshots, we see somebody die, we see this, here, we not about to talk about that. It happened, we move on. That's what happens. So for me to just have that interview and just explain like my work with Tribe, how I'm changing the community. I'm not a city council member, I'm not the mayor, I'm not this and that, but for me to share my voice, that's just me trying to help change the community and put my input on what we can do to change. And I feel like me growing up in a rough society, because I used to hang out with the wrong crowd. Before I worked with Tribe, I hanged out with the wrong crowd. I went to jail, and when I got out, the first thing I went to was Tribe. They really helped me change me. Even when I was at Tribe, I still fumbled and was messing up. Then I had to go to Harbor House. I was about 2 years ago, I was at Harbor House, and I just came back home with Tribe last year, because it was rough, getting out and then still hanging with the wrong crowd, but going to the right people at Tribe and, hanging around the right people, they really got me out of that slump, excuse me. So I even told my friends, like I said, being a black man, we don't really get to talk about that. I even told my friend, and he came and did the interview. My friend Kevin. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He came and did the interview. He said it was powerful. He had just got out. A month before y'all did the interview, he got out. He just got out. So for him to express his views, like I said, being local in the community, what we can do to change to help people like him. He just got out. People like him, and just seeing the vision for the future and helping young people and just trying to change and hoping this reached them, seeing how that works.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Daniela, I would love to give you a chance to talk a little bit about the work that we're about to embark on in partnership with DVP. Can you just take it away?
Yeah, so we're working with a group of between 18 and 25 community engagement team members who were former clients of ours, so people who were kind of deemed at the highest risk here in Oakland, and really working with them, Possibility Lab, really excited to be venturing into just research and supporting them. They're going to be learning so much about their own community, so they're going to be going out into their own communities and doing research, right? Asking questions around what makes people feel safe, where's the lack of safety here in the community. So whether that be the parks or just like city issues, maybe there's no lighting in the area, things like that. So that's what we're going to be working on. They're really excited. And for a lot of them, this is the first time that anybody's even asking them, like what what is your experience, or what do you think is important for, for safety? So for them, this is the first time that they're even considered like the experts in this work. So that's something that they're really looking forward to. They're just a group of folks who are really wanting to give back, and just, I think, haven't had the way to do that.
Terrific. Thank you. If you all haven't given questions to Kate, you can pass them along. And I'm going to ask just a couple more questions. I don't know if I've got time to go through every panelist one more time, but I'm going to do a little bit more before we start to ask questions from the audience. I would love to hear from you, Andrew, about what this research tells us about I think we've already gotten a little taste of this, but what this research tells us about the importance of tribes work.
I don't think it's just tribes work. I think it's more like what tribe is on, the lane that we're in. And there's a bunch of other CBOs. There's a plethora of CBOs, but I think, along with George and, along with, Courage and DVP, I think there's this movement. I mean, even Danielle and I were talking, it's like, hey, let's not get territorial. Let's not get too much on the funding tip. Let's just really try to make a difference for these communities. And let's come with that heart. And then when we find that kinship spirit, in and out of the city, the county, the state, then you can start to build. And I guess I just want to really emphasize the point is that the issues that we're dealing with nowadays, we just did not have. There's so many of the resources that are no longer available. We didn't have active shootings. We didn't have the prevalence of just everybody got a gun. And it's just as we have violence interrupters that go out to the scene. And maybe 30 years ago, you might have gone out and the majority of the issues had to do with turf or group or network related, stuff, right? Now the majority of the stuff is not that. It's just two people who had a gun. Yeah. And they just ran into each other and it was a bad day. And shots got fired, someone got hit. Encampments, I mean, that's huge, even geopolitical stuff that's happening that's forcing people out of their homes. And then the people who are outside of their homes, it's the social fabric has broken down over decades of, people being poor and not getting out of vicious cycles, alcohol, drug addiction, not hooking up with Courage after they got, out of jail. So they're continuing on with their lifestyles, their kids get messed up. And then all of a sudden, there's no one else to say, you can sleep on my couch. So now you're outside. When you're outside, whatever mental illness that you had, whatever sociopathic tendencies that you may or may not have, just gets accentuated. Nowadays, we have issues like something might happen because we make a decision here, and then the Venezuelans are out over there, and then we have 10,000 Venezuelans that crossed the border over the past 6 months or something, right? And now we're starting to see that in Oakland. So these issues, it's just next level. And I think that, really with the value for us is just, again, emphasizing the point that the community does have solutions, but we've got to be given some leeway, some resource, some time to be able to figure it out and then work with the city to better utilize the city, state, county resources so that the things can be applied and we can have a little breathing room so that some of the solutions I've already mentioned can come about. We see the fruit, but I think that if we go to the short term and we bring in the National Guard or whatever, it's just we're going to be right back to the cycle and it's going to be more vicious than it is right now.
Thank you. I think I have time for one more question. So for George, could you talk a little bit about what it was like, if you heard from your community members, what it was like for them to participate in the research process?
Yeah, I would echo kind of what Daniela was describing is, one, I'll say part of the reason why we also want to be a part of this process is we believe that if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu, right? And so it was important, and I think that there's something very validating about being heard, particularly, when your voice has been marginalized, when your voice has been invisibilized in so many ways, you know what I mean? Particularly by systems, and particularly by the same kinds of folks who are making decisions about your life and about your community, right? Because a lot of the folks we work with too actually have a lot of power in their neighborhood, they're just informal shot callers. You know what I mean? They have a lot of influence, and that's something that I think oftentimes gets sort of ignored and neglected, is the power of like the big homie who's coming out. Like me and Andrew and the rest of us up here, we might be doing some really powerful mentoring work, but if we alienate that person, that's why we never create this sort of us and them dichotomy. You know what I mean? You know, those are all our family members. And, you know, and we don't create this kind of, you know, we just don't create, we create carve-outs. We don't create carve-outs. You know, we believe at Courage that every young person is a blessing. We believe that every young person has a sacred purpose. And the truth of the matter is if they don't fulfill their sacred purpose, that's not their failure, that's ours as a society. And you never ever know just what kind of genius might have been disappeared, whether it was being caught up as a victim of gun violence, whose life was stolen, or behind the walls in a cage. Because the truth of the matter is when those things occur, we don't just lose one person, we lose multiple folks. So you just never know what impact that person might have had on your family, on your future descendants, your grandchildren or great-grandchildren someday, or their family member. And we're destabilizing families. Like every time somebody gets incarcerated, every time somebody is warehoused in a cage, you're taking away potential income for a family. You're taking away sacred relationships. Like the way families are being devastated and destabilized and these are all parts of the collateral damage and consequences that people don't think about, right? And when people are coming home, they're not necessarily greeted and welcomed and loved. Like even by family sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Like you might come home and that first month they're real happy to see you. 3 months later, they're looking at you like, damn, you eating all that cereal? You know what I'm saying? Like, so, you know, how are we tapping in to the gifts and the credibility that they have? Because anyone who's been there, done that, has overcome the challenges of the young people are being confronted with right now, and are probably the ones best equipped to reach them in making a realistic decision in life, and life-affirming decisions that they're making. You know what I mean? And so, and that was one of the indicators, seeing people who come back, who return home, that have lived experience, right? And another indicator was about community building and positive community connection. I can't remember directly, specifically how it was phrased, but that's what it boiled down to, community connection. And if you think about it, like every child, an infant, the very first fundamental need that an infant has is for connection. And too many of our young people never even got that connection. So they may not get that positive community connection until they come home as adults, if we greet them and we support them and we love on them the way we should.
Thank you. Are we ready with questions from the audience?
Okay.
Okay.
So we've got about 5 here, so I'm hoping we can hear them all. Just expectation setting.
Okay.
Thank you. Or 6. So, first question is: haven't people been calling for a holistic approach to public safety for a long time, and what is new here?
I'm guessing that's a question for me. But I mean, other folks are welcome. If anybody else want to take that question, or should I?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
I got a little something to add.
Okay.
I'm sure other folks do too.
So I would say that in a lot of ways, the firsthand framework approach, it reveals like stuff that we all already knew, right? But it does it in a way that that helps us look at it in a different way. We start with such a simple question, just how do you know, right? What are the signs that you look towards? And from that, we can see that safety means so many different things to all these different community members. And it points towards this more holistic approach. We didn't come in to this research with an agenda as researchers to say it needs to be a holistic approach. We said, what do you look to figure out if your community is safe? And so, yeah, maybe what we're doing here is just echoing what other people have already said, but I hope that there's a way that this research can help draw even more attention to those calls, and in a way that is, unfortunately, more valued by policymakers than maybe somebody showing up and you know, coming to every town hall and saying the same thing over and over again, right? So if this research helps to elevate and to lift up those voices and help other people hear them more loudly, then I feel like we've done our job. George, do you want to add something?
Yeah, it may seem like I'm going off on a tangent, but I swear to God I'm not. I mean, nationally as a federal budget, we spend about 60-some-odd% of our federal budget on the military. Similarly, if you look at local municipalities and you look at police budgets, and police are basically local militaries. We spend about 60-some-odd% of our budget on law enforcement. And we have never fully invested in the holistic strategy. So even when there's been investment and there's, you know, sometimes we've had some good thought leaders. We've had some phenomenal community workers, and folks are, you know, implementing holistic strategies, but we are not funded at the scale for the need that we have. And the truth of the matter is this: the data speaks for itself. The community-based organizations are the only strategy in which there's empirical evidence for impact and success. If we held, like as community workers, we're always asked to prove the absolute efficacy of what we do. If we held law enforcement to that strategy, if we held incarceration to that standard, they would have been defunded a long time ago. So we're kind of at this impasse right now politically. And I hate to say it because it's like it shouldn't be a political issue. If we are simply doing what is evidence-based, there is no evidence that increased police budgets translate into increased public safety. The police budget has gone up by 30% in the last 4 years, and guess what? So is crime. So is crime. And they gaslighted community. They tried to say that the defund movement was responsible for it. They never got defunded. Their budget has increased. So I'll say that much.
Thank you. Anybody else want to take the question, or should we take another one from the audience? All right.
All right, we've got a couple of questions about the data. One is for all the panelists on how do you think your communities will use the data visualizations on the website? Will they use them? Why? And what does everyone plan to do with this data and community feedback?
Anybody want to take a stab at it?
I think for the San Antonio, East Lake, you know, that part of East Oakland community, the first step in what we do with the data is just feeling affirmed, like to see what was said and you didn't quite have the words for it or you didn't do the interview. So much of what happens in communities that are on the survival tip rather than the prosperity tip is you don't talk a lot. It's just things are known and you move in a way that's like if you talk about it, it's like, why are you talking about that? You're being a weirdo right now. You just move. But still, things need to be said. Like, for instance, George's voice is so refreshing because some of the stuff that he's being said, it's like new. You're like, oh, I didn't think about it that way before. And so it's the same, this data, when you see it, especially nice, dressed up on the website with you know, research, you know, parameters around it, well presented, and then you see someone like yourself. And then I think the next step that we're planning to do is we're always looking for data. I mean, grants, you know, different RFPs, it's come out. It's hard just to, data is not the first thing that we're thinking about. But I forget, some grant writer over the weekend, we had staff training, said, data equals money. You need to put that equation into and we don't want to be about the money, but we want to be smart about what we're doing and not have to constantly be there pouting like we're doing the work. How come we're not being supported? It's systemic, like George is saying. So sometimes all you can do is pout. But I think this is an avenue, a road path to say like, well, here's some hard data, and we'll be able to present it, and then. But it's living with the possibility lab. I think there's some next steps that we can take together, not just on what they're doing with DVP, but also let's say we do a proposal together and we like to highlight these elements, here. So.
George, did you want to take it,
Oh,
JJ?
yeah, sure. I feel like for what you said about people using the website and people actually putting in their vote and doing, actually filling out the form, to get people to do that, I feel like outreach, personally, I might be kind of biased with that because I'm an outreach specialist with Tribe. And that's all we do. But I feel like it works a lot because not just with like the QR codes, but the flyers we hand out. Like I said, we handed out flyers on Tuesday. It's people that come up to us like, they probably don't even speak English, but they got a flyer, so they feel like they can get free food. So they come to us, that gets them engaged. Like I said, it's all about engagement. I give you this, you come here, I'm gonna give you more information on, this website, how you can fill it out, and how it affects your community. Not only you, the whole community. And I feel like a lot of people don't do that nowadays. I feel like everybody focus on themselves. How can they get this? How can I do this? But I feel like if you let them know, really break down the website, like you said, having a nice, flourished website with all the data, people really looking at it and really understanding what they're doing. Because I feel like sometimes we have to fill out, with our flyers, you got to fill out, your information and stuff. People feel like they just go to the website, put this in, they're going to get free food. You don't even know what you're signing up for. You don't even know what you're doing. So really breaking it down and showing them, okay, sign this up. I know one of my coworkers, Esmeralda, is really good with that because she can speak 2 languages too, so she's really good with setting them up on the QR code, setting them up on the website, letting them know, okay, this is what you signed up for, this is what you're getting, especially with the food. Some people come with carts, and they just signed up for all this food, you can't even carry it all. So, just really, knowing what you're doing and really outreaching and talking to people, engaging with people, and letting them know, okay, this could really help our community, come on this website, sign up, and just really engaging and talking to people.
George, do you want to take the question?
Yeah, I would love to actually, so first of all, I would just, to their credit, we were involved in kind of helping to kind of shape and, like I just really value participatory methods. Everything that we do at Courage has always been participatory from our formation. We do participatory policy making and developing our priorities that way. And we use circle process. And I think a lot of people think of circle process only around like restorative justice, and when a harm occurs, but actually, we use it for popular education, like Paulo Freire and, Freirean kind of, acknowledging that every student is a teacher and every teacher is a student, right? We use it for visioning, for planning, for healing. Circle process is like a big part of what we do. So I really value the opportunities, and I'll just be the first to acknowledge too, our bandwidth is stretched. Like we are constantly dealing with a lot of crisis. Heavy things in our community. We're holding families whose loved ones have been stolen. And so we have limited bandwidth in terms of really capacity to sometimes engage. And so what I appreciated about this process is it was kind of like this sort of grace and this flexibility. We were kind of invited to be able to kind of step in and step out based on our capacity, and we were never shamed when we didn't necessarily have the capacity to kind of step in when we were invited. And I think that this is an evolving process. So there's some things about it that I like that are interactive. And what I also believe is that there's still a lot of digital divide issues. And so like one of the very first things that Courage ever did when we founded, and we were really trying to make our research accessible, is we used a format called Photo Voice. But beyond just Photo Voice, we created what was called a photonovela. And the photonovela reflected the stories, the lived experience of our young people in Oakland. It was called, Forgotten Voices, a youth vision for Oakland. And it was really addressing the gang injunctions. And it was defendants in the Fruitville gang injunction who co-authored this report, right? And we use this comic book format. And even though printing is kind of sometimes seems as antiquated nowadays, you know what? If you're trying to get like folks who are locked up and folks in the community to read it, some folks still need something to hold on to. Some folks are old school like that. So I think that I would love for us to be able to kind of think a little bit about some popular education ways to do some community engagement similar to that, to convey some of the indicators in a more kind of innovative way. And of course, our photonovela was bilingual. And and the truth of the matter is, if you look at the community that my brother here serves and the Fruitville community, we are considered some of the most diverse neighborhoods in the entire nation. Like, we have about 50 languages spoken in our communities. We have Hmong, Mien, Cantonese, Mandarin, Spanish. We have Maya Mum, Zapotec, all kinds of indigenous languages, you know what I'm saying? Bosnian, just you name it, you know what I mean? Like, it's super diverse. So obviously, I don't think we can translate it to 50 languages, but I do think we can prioritize and do some targeted outreach, particularly to the communities that were engaged in the process. All of those communities that were engaged, Vietnamese and other communities, it should be translated into their languages. So that's kind of what I'll say.
Yeah, I just a little anecdote. The very, very first focus group we did at Tribe, we thought it was going to be a bilingual Spanish-English group, and it turned out there were 5 different languages going on in that focus group. And somehow we made it work, right? It was like there was a little corner of the Cantonese speakers, and there was one who was bilingual, and she translated, and it was like there was a little Spanish corner, there was a mom corner. Like, we had a whole lot of languages going on, and somehow, when folks are used to living with each other and communicating with each other, we made it work. Yeah, thank you for that. I think that the challenge with the translation is real, and it's something that we need to continue working on. Yeah. Daniela, did you want to address this question of how these indicators can be useful for DVP?
Yeah. I think for the community engagement team members, it's going to give them a real opportunity to affect change through civic engagement, something that they haven't, been a part of before. So really just being able to see, really assess their own kind of neighborhoods, communities, and see what are the issues, bringing them forth, and then actually seeing the change kind of happen. So I think for them, it'll give them a sort of access in a way that a lot of folks don't have, right? So somebody might be the encampment, somebody might be like parks, whatever the situation may be around their environments, they're going to be able to address it and really be a part of the process, and which is something that they're really excited about doing. And something that I don't know, for them, they are really seriously the experts on, the community, right? I think a lot of what they share with us really affects the work that we do. And really moves our work forward, right? Because they share so much with us. We're always learning every day from them. So I think this is one of the times where they're going to be actually, driving the work.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So one question piggybacks on what Daniela was just talking about, which is the partnership between DVP and Possibility Lab. What will be the metrics for success?
I think for me, when I think about what this work would look like, if I'm looking back on it and saying was this useful or not, one big question I have is whether or not the community engagement team members feel like they were empowered through the process, right? Feel like they gained valuable skills and felt like the work that they did somehow made a difference, right? So then, in order to get there, we also have to make sure that that the solutions that they uncover and they recommend are somehow implemented, right? I think the worst thing that could happen is for the community engagement team members to point to, we need to do X, Y, and Z, and then, something else is what the city puts its attention to, right? And so I think that we've built ways to make sure that that doesn't happen into the plan. So we're starting with a process where they're going to talk to their community members, come up with a set of solutions, then meet with the city administrator and ask about which of these are feasible. And then after they have a list of the ones that might be feasible, they go back to the community and say, okay, these are the feasible projects, which one is your priority? And then they're going to be part of a dialogue between community and the city. And so with that, there's no guarantees, right? But the hope is that they will be able to find actionable solutions that will actually be put into place. Do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I think anytime they're just included in the conversation is successful for them, right? Like I said, through this process, this is one of the times where they're actually feeling heard and validated. And this is a group where historically, a lot of them have not gotten along, right? They're from opposite, sides, and we've really been able to get them together and just put aside all their differences and really go to trainings and really just have a lot of thought partnership and really have them really share together, come together and really build community together. So for them, I think just being a part of the process is going to be impactful.
Could I add something? It might feel like I'm not in the mix and I'm putting myself in the Kool-Aid a little here, but 2 comments. One is, when it comes to metrics, a lot of times just doing the work, it's like we sometimes have these unrealistic sort of expectations, for lack of a better term. And, and I'll give you some really concrete examples. Like, given the population we work with, sometimes it's around recidivism. It's around things like that frankly sometimes are beyond our control. Because I know some young people who were actually thriving. They weren't engaging in any criminal behavior, but they went back to jail because they had an asshole probation officer who violated on some technicality. I've seen it many, many times. So for me, recidivism wasn't the metric of success. The metric is, when a young person comes to courage, do they feel loved? Do they feel supported? Do they feel welcomed, right? So I want to just kind of say that as a way of just kind of reframing what metrics may look like for success. And for me, another metric that is maybe a little more concrete and substantive is, we talk about gangbanging on the block, but let's talk about gangbanging between governments. What's up with Alameda County and the city of Oakland? Why can't they get along and collaborate? For real. You know what I mean? The city of Oakland, we're putting all this pressure on, but guess who has a much bigger budget? Alameda County. We have the second largest reserve in the nation in Alameda County, $2 billion plus, just sitting in reserve. We get $3 billion in tax revenue a year in Alameda County. Alameda County spends anywhere between $700,000 to nearly $1 million a year to incarcerate one young person. And we're talking about young people who come from the most vulnerable families in Alameda County. And probation and the county runs Santa Rita Jail. So, that sort of integrated collaboration, can we stop the gangbanging between the city of Oakland and Alameda County? And can we actually have integrated collaboration to advance peace in our communities from a regional framework? So, just another metric to consider.
Thank you.
I'll just also add that just getting these folks in the same room together was already a success. Again, because these are folks who historically have not been able to be in the same vicinity with each other. So the work that we've been able to do, just getting them in the same room, I'll tell you, I was pretty worried about it. As we were kind of going into getting them together, I'm like, how is this going to work? But again, we have very seasoned, violence interrupters, case managers, folks on the ground who have been doing this work for a very long time, who this group really honors and respects. And so just, again, getting them in the same room to work together, having conversations across the table was a huge success for us. So, yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
Do we have more questions?
Yeah, we've got another one about root causes. So you'd mentioned in the slides about root causes and wondering about the disinvestment in the communities that may have played a role in creating these root causes, and if you can expand on that.
Should we start with 1492?
So one of the things I want to say about that process map is that as we try to place indicators into that map, a lot of the times it's hard to know exactly where a particular indicator should fit. Say, for example, the indicator that you mentioned about people feeling safe if they have a weapon, or only feeling safe if they have a weapon. Is that a root cause? Is it a consequence? Is it a direct measure of a lack of safety, right? It can go in all those different places. And so one of the things that we are hoping the CETs and other folks who engage with the indicators might do is look through the indicators and think about which are the ones that they think might be the main root causes that need to be tackled. And I absolutely would elevate the question, that what's underneath that question is this idea of disinvestment in communities being a major root cause. I mean, when I think about when we began this work and when we picked out those 42 different organizations to reach out to, it was really hard to pick from all the different community organizations that exist in Oakland. But not all those organizations are getting funded and are getting supported, but they're doing amazing work. This city is so full of people who are dedicated to this community. And if we could invest in those people, then absolutely, I think that is going to hugely move the needle. Do any of you want to tackle that question also? Aside from 1492?
I feel like I've been dominating. I got plenty to say, but I want to yield to others who may want to share some.
Just to kind of flip it, as I said, we're really about just action, what we can do on the ground, and sometimes you can go into colonialism and the history of racism and what we're continuing to do in our country, how budgets are spent towards militarization and this and same old solutions, giving us a feeling of insanity. But you can almost start with a negative, thinking that you're positive, right? With that question, root causes, and thinking you're going positive, and you can say something, for instance, like stop the hate. Whereas just kind of flip that a little bit, I guess we're just more into how can we, like right now, kind of move and make a difference today, so that we can build a relationship for tomorrow, and then so on and so forth. So for instance, one of our flyers, we may put like stop the hate. There's a lot of hate going on, especially what's going on, globally. That's affecting us right here locally. A lot of us are deeply connected to some of the worldwide issues, some of the violence, the killings, et cetera, beyond what's the CE parameters of Oakland. But we want to put on the flyer, we want to put on our messaging like share the love. How do we, move that direction? And I think you can just kind of get real caught up in like root causes. And I don't think it's a bad question. I just think that it's already out there. I'm not going to be able to speak to that. I guess what I'm speaking towards is the movement that we try to do of, for instance, like people talked about food deserts. Oh, if we just, put more grocery stores around, then people start eating healthy. And it kind of gets to a place where you're sort of shaming people. Like people don't know how to go about eating healthy, like they've lost connection with their culture. And we want to say, man, the root cause there is poverty. Give people some money, so they can drive to where the grocery store is, and it's so much of this is poverty, and not that we just need to teach people out how to eat in a more healthy way. And so, that's why sometimes we don't necessarily go to, sorry to sidestep the question, because I'm sure George got something directly, for it. I guess we're just more, like focused on how can, what are some of the movements that we can do? So for instance, this share the love messaging that we're trying to do is like, have you been feeling overwhelmed emotionally, exacerbated, angry, like completely out of control? What can you do right now? There's understanding for another person, their experience, their background. You can help somebody today and serve them You know, make a phone call. And then we ask the question, what can we do as a community together? You know, and I think in that way, in a roundabout way, we start hitting root causes in a way that really make people that are on a binary, you know, like tip to start asking deeper questions. Oh man, this goes deeper. It's about connection. It is about sharing the love. It's not just about, well, I don't accept that root cause. We just need to cut it off where it is right now and get a baseline of lawlessness like out so that people are more lawful. And then we can start talking about some sane matters. And we're like, we're already past the conversation where anything positive can happen. So
I'll jump in real quickly and just say I appreciate the question. You know, my elders taught me you don't really know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And particularly at a time, in a moment in which there is a very concerted effort to erase our histories, Black history, Indigenous history, LGBT, women's history, all those liberation struggles. Did you know that the state of Florida was trying to legislate, and they're, you know, besides just all the typical kind of book burnings and book bannings they've been doing, they actually want to banish the dictionary. They want to banish the dictionary because you can look up the word racism and find a definition of racism and other things like that. Like, it's really kind of frightening, you know what I mean? The efforts to really just kind of erase history right now. And so I think that there's important, and I think there's something validating and almost cathartic for people who have been systems involved and systems impacted by current systems of oppression or conditions to know that there is, in fact, that this wasn't just something that occurred in a vacuum. It's a little validating when we're always kind of told, like, this white Puritan work ethic, like, y'all should just work harder. You know what I mean? Things like that. Some of the hardest working people I know are in poverty. Some of the laziest people are billionaires. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's about exploitation and a whole bunch of other variables, right? And so we have historical and we have intergenerational trauma. The Black community has a post-slave stress syndrome. You know, Indigenous and other communities of color have a post-colonial stress disorder. And it's important, as my brother Andrew pointed out, not to get stuck there, because we can easily begin to pathologize ourselves. So from a strength-based approach, we also know we have historical and intergenerational wisdom. We have historical and intergenerational culture, and we have historical and intergenerational healing. And that's part of that holistic approach we're talking about. Like, part of our, what we call the total, what some people call their kind of, what do they call it? Theory of change, right, in lots of nonprofits. We have what we call the total, theory of transformation and liberation. So our theory of transformation and liberation is really also rooted in a healing foundation and encouraging our young people to reclaim, relearn, and return to ancestral traditions and practices, including decolonizing your diet. You know what I'm saying? So, so this is a much longer conversation. We could probably do a whole course and write a dissertation and an encyclopedia and, you know, on this whole subject. But I appreciate the question.
I think we have about run out of time, so can we go to the last slide, because I want to just take 1 minute to thank people who made this research possible. First of all, our funder. California 100 Initiative really generously funded the work that we've been telling you about. We also had institutional partners who helped make this work possible. My university, Santa Clara University, Brandeis University, where some of our research partners were located, and then the Everyday Peace Indicators Research Group, which I'm also a part of, which inspired the methodology that we've used here. And then also, I just want to give another huge shout out to all of our community partners, not just the ones we could include here on the stage with us tonight, and the Department of Violence Prevention, and also every single individual who showed up to talk to us and to share their wisdom with us in all of our many focus groups and town halls. So thank you all so much.
You too. I like the game we spent, soaking all that up.
Thank you.